Okay, we're starting the first Shiur on Shulchan Aruch. The previous Shiurim were in the Gemara. It's the first Shiur on Shulchan Aruch. I know most people are in Kuf Samach, somewhere within the first 14, 15 Sa'ifim. So we're starting with the first, not the first sugya in the Siman, there's other sugyas in the Siman, it's the first sugya that I want to talk about, which is about someone, we know that ribis has to become a ribis deraisa has to have pretty much two conditions. One condition is that you determine that there's going to be a certain price, is going to be that you're giving a certain amount of money and you're going to get back more. You predetermine it from the beginning, and that the reason that the reason that you're holding the money is because the reason you're paying more is for being able to hold the money for a certain amount of time. The questions all begin when you have scenarios where a person makes more money, but it wasn't decided in the beginning. And that's one of the topics. The topic we're going to be discussing today is about that specific topic, when money comes into the lender at the end of the loan, more money than he gave, and it was not specifically stated for the purpose of ribis. So this is in the Tur. The Tur starts, it's parallel to Sif Daled in the Shulchan Aruch. The Tur says, "Afilu im aloyve noisen lo yoser midaito b'shas hapiron." It means if the loyve gives more money to the malve at the time of piron, it's very important to remember. It's a crucial point that b'shas hapiron is the key over here. That it's given at the time when he's paying back the interest, the loan. He didn't make a condition from the beginning that he's going to give him extra. If he did, it's a ribis deraisa. He also doesn't tell him that he's giving it to him for the purpose of ribis. He's just giving him extra. What exactly does that mean? We're going to see soon. What he does, if he tells him anything, it doesn't tell him anything, we can get to that soon. But basically, he's not telling him that it's for the purpose of ribis. It's awesome. Tur says it's awesome. Then the Tur adds, "Af pi sherashi v'aramba matirim." ואף על פי שרש"י מתיר בזה וגם הרמב"ם כוסף להתירו לא ינהירו לעובי אדוני הראש ז"ל. Means even though Rashi is completely matir in such a scenario, and the Rambam also writes להתירו, my father, the Rosh, does not agree with this heter, and therefore the Tur paskins that it is awesome. That is what the Tur over here says, and what we will call Sa'if Daled in the Tur. Right? The simple reading of the Tur is that Rashi and Rambam permit any sort of extra payment at the time of Piron, as long as you don't say clearly that it's for the purpose of ribis. And the Rosh disagrees and does not allow any sort of extra coming at the time of Piron, even if you don't say that it's for the purpose of ribis. Right away, the Beis Yosef brings the words of Rashi, and he says the story over there. He says you have to. What's the story over there? The story was that Ravina met on by the river of Shanvasa. That's a river in Iraq. It's not really a river. It's a water canal that connects the two rivers, the Chidekel and the Pros. It starts in Pumpedissa and it goes across, and that's the Shanvasa. And over there is where all the No, I couldn't find it on the maps. The two rivers, the Chidekel and the Pros, still flow, but that area does not. That river is not. That canal is not there anymore. Somewhere along the track between the two cities there's like a body of water, but the full length of the canal you can't see, at least not on Google Maps. I didn't go there to check, and I'm not planning on going to Iraq to check it, if it's there or not. So he sat over there, which is where all the sachrim were hanging around over there. And he gave a certain amount of money to buy a certain amount of wine down the line. He prepaid for a certain amount of wine that's going to be available at the time when the wine season begins. When the time came to receive the wine, he got more than what he planned on. So he went to Rav Ashi, asked him what is he supposed to do, and they said achuli kamachli gabach. This extra was achuli kamachli. It's midin mechila. Rashi explains over there why was it mutter for him to keep the extra. Rashi puts three things. Hayil. Rashi says first of all leposakte imaim. You didn't make a condition with them from the onset that you're getting more. It's not a shayla of ribis. Midaitam noisim l'cha. You didn't ask for it. They're giving it to you for free. They're giving it to you from their own. Ve'ein maskirim loymar b'schal moisecha shehoyu b'telos etzleinu. They are not telling you that the reason they're giving it to you is because they held the money for you for a while. It's matana b'alma. It's a matana. It's not ribis, and you're allowed to keep it. That's Rashi. Now, so from Rashi, it seems that if it's given within these three conditions, it's fine. There is a Rambam. The Rambam writes in Perek Dal Halacha Yud in Hilchos Malve Loive. It says, "Amavis Chaverim Atzalevi Yoser." Someone who lends to his friend, and the Loive afterwards receives, when he gets the money back, he realizes there's more than what he gave. The Malvis Chaverim and the Loive realized that the amount of money that he got from the Malva is more than what he expected. Or, because you'll see the Rambam is not talking about ribis specifically. Or the other way around, when he paid back the money, the Malva discovers that the Loiva gave more money. If it's within range of human error, then you have to. If it's the amount that you're not going to make they're not going to make a mistake, you have to give it back. If it's within a certain range of mistake, then it has to be given back. Right. So over here also we see if it's not within a certain range of mistake, we can consider it a matana. And that's because other people hold the basis of didn't write specifically. Where is it over here? You're right. This is it's a different. That's the one's connected to a different place than I'm sorry. You're right about this. It's a different halach in Periches. I made a mistake. I mixed up with another So it's over there. Then he brings on this. He says, "Well, the Rosh is worried about. It's not comfortable to be matir, being that it's done b'shas Pirayon. It seems like ribis mischazik ribis afilu b'stam. Even if it's not specifically given for the purpose of ribis, it looks like ribis." And then the Beis Yosef brings the words of the Nemuke of the Talmidei Rashba Nemuke Yosef, that they say you look at that Rashi, you can't bring a proof from that Rashi, because what's that story talking about? It's talking about mecher, it's talking about a business deal, it's talking about a sale, it's not talking about a loan. And therefore, when as the Rashi and the Rambam Matir is talking about when it's a form of mecher, mekach. And over there, when they gave extra, you did not specify that it's for the purpose of holding the money for a certain amount of time. It's not for Amtanas Mois. But when it's regular loan, even Rashi and the Rambam will be machmer. And the Beis Yosef adds in Bedek Habayis, which is the end of Achein Ikar, and that is the halacha is like this: that in Alva it's asur, in Mekach Umemkar. If you don't specify this for ribis, it's mutter. Based on what I just explained to you, that Gam Rashi Rashi and Rambam also do not allow in halva.
Where do we see that that's what they say Rashi holds?
they explain that's this is what he says. The Bedek. That's how we understood. The Beis Yosef understood. He says the Talmidei Rashba wrote it stamazai.
Yeah.
And the Bedek and the Talmidei Rashba bring the Gemara and they explain it one. The Bedek Abayis comes and tells you according to the based on this explanation, that's the main explanation of the Gemara. That's the main explanation of the halacha. And Al-Pizeh, Rashi and the Rambam also were not similar to. They follow the same idea, and you cannot say that Rashi and the Rambam would be matir in halacha in a case of it would be matir in halacha even if you don't say that it's for the purpose of rebis, but it would be matir. In essence, he disagrees with the understanding of the Tur. The Tur understood that Rashi and Rambam are matir also in halacha. And there in the Rosh is machmir both in Halacha and Mekach Mamkan. The Beis Yosef splits the two into two separate ones. And it seems like the Bach understood the same way over here also. Yeah, and you have the Bach over here, and then you have also the Kundasachin of the Bach, and it seems that they understood also a similar way in the Shut of Rashi and Rambam. Comes the Pariша, and the Pariša over here, where it says "V'gam Rambam kosav le'teira," he brings the Rambam and has a question on the Torah. Says, he brings the Rambam that I mentioned before. That's the Rambam that was supposed to be that I mentioned before. The one that I put in the Beis Yosef really supposed belongs in the Pariša. That's the Rambam that I mentioned before really belongs in the Pariša. Perek Dal.
The Pariша is bringing the Shach, whereas the Torah that Rambam is referring to is that.
That was the Machlekes what Torah the Rambam was referring to. If it's a Perek Ches, Shach himself understood like I'm saying that if it's Perek Dal, the Perek Ches.
Right. The Perek Ches is clearly the Keh.
But this one, this is the one. This is also the Pariša. And this one's relevant because it's connected to simulation with base also. So the Pariša brings the Rambam that I mentioned before about that if it's within the mistake within a reasonable level of mistake, then it's considered you have to give it back. You don't have to give it back depending on that, which means it doesn't discuss the issue whether it's ribis or not. And he says, well, the question of this whole thing, this is a simple Gemara that if the extra is within the range of mistake, then you don't have to give it back. And that, so therefore, what's you think that the Rosh is going to argue in the Pariša Gemara? That's the first point. And then he says the way that he understands, it's really the Gemara is talking over there about Mekach Mamka, but in Halacha it's for sure Aser. That's how the Pariša understands it. It's similar to what we said before. You have a Torah L'Choshim but in simulation like this, where the Torah brings this halacha that if you make a mistake and the mistake is within the range, it's considered that it is, you have to, within range, you don't have to give it back, and doesn't mention anything about ribis. And you can't find that for the verse talking about only about Mekach Mamka, because the Lashon of the Torah L'Choshim Mishpat is V'hu Hadin L'chol HaMekabel Mois Mechavere Bein B'teras Alva Bein B'teras Piraon. Whether it's alva or Piraon, it mentions clearly that it's alva. That's not mecher. So you can't say that this din that the Rambam says in Perek Daled and the Gemara and the Torah is only talking about mecher, but if it will be alva, be a shayla of ribis, the Torah himself brings that halacha and mentions the word of alva. So he explains differently. He says, what are we talking about? What's the difference between here and simulation of base? It's a difference in what you say. So if you say that you're giving it for ribis, it's for sure also. Nobody disagrees with that. And what are we talking about over here in Tur? When you tell him you're giving him more, but you're not telling him it's for ribis. That's what stam over here means. That you're telling him that you're giving him more, but you're not telling him it's for ribis. So that is also. And Reish Lamed Beis is talking about that you're not telling him anything at all. You're not telling him anything at all, so that's mutter. That's how the Pariša understands. That's how the Pariša understands it over there. So in that scenario over here, when you mention that you're giving more, but you're not saying this for the purpose of ribis, that the Rosh and the Tur will be Oyser. And the way he understands the Rambam, and the way the Tur understood the Rambam, that the Rambam would be matter in such a scenario. That is the way the Parish understands it. So we have the Parish understands first from the main Akud over here. The Parish understands the main point over here is that he defines that this scenario is talking about that you gave extra and you said you're giving extra, but you did not say that it's for ribis. Not that you gave extra without saying anything. If you gave extra without saying anything, it would be mutter. Now let's jump to the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch in the way the Rosh understood, the way the Tur understood the Rambam, would be matter. Means what they're all arguing about is what. It's speaking that's the din of Enadas Toya, and that is talking about he doesn't divide it whether it's Das Toya or not. He divides it whether it's Stam. What does Stam mean? He says in Reish base when you don't have to give it back when it's Enadas Toya, has nothing to do with ribbis, because the moment you say Stam, you don't say anything. It comes out of the box of ribbis and moves into the box of something else. Gezel, whatever you're going to put it, whichever box you're going to put into, it's not a box of ribbis. Once it's out of the box of ribbis, then you have to start determining: is it going to be? Do you have to give it back? Or you not have to give it back? So is it das tayir or not?
So the Rambam in Parakasi says the same law as Parakdala, just one in Tini Mekhamemkar, one in.
That's what it seems like, so that's how he understands the Rambam. How he understands the Torah. In a case where he doesn't. Oh, in a case he doesn't say anything, Torah says mutter. It's not begetted of the way the Parish understands it. It will be totally mutter. If he doesn't say anything, the whole machlekes is when he says, "I'm giving you extra." He's not saying that it's for that reason, because then it's a shaila if it's ribis or not. If you don't say anything, it doesn't even fall into the box of ribis. It falls into the box of something else, not even in the box of ribis at all. In the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber, you could say surprisingly, only quotes the words of the Torah, doesn't quote what he himself writes in Bedek Abayis. He just says, "Afilu melev noisen leyosim medaita v'shas piran shlehisnei v'ne'emer shenoisen le'loim b'shul ribis." Oh, so that's it. Quotes the Rosh, quotes the Torah. The Ramah is the one who brings what the Beis Yosef writes in Bedek Abayis, that if it's derech mecher, it's mutter. So over here you have another few on the Shulchan Aruch. You have another few explanations to differentiate. First of all, what are we talking about over here? Second of all, what does it say? What's the difference between here and simulation and base? So you have the Taz. Taz over here says. He starts in the haksham simulation with base. We talked about before about simulation with base that if it's das taya, then you don't have to give it back if it's within the regular mistakes. So he says, over there the Torah doesn't mention anything about ribis, so why over here he does mention about ribis? So the Taz says, well, a very simple difference between here and there. He says over there in Chayshim Mishpat is talking about that you got a bag of money, and some point down the line you counted it and you realized there was extra over there. Over here, what are we talking about that it's asur? When the guy's sitting and counting, he counts, you owe him $1,000. He's sitting and counting 1,000 bills, and then he says, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, gets 999, 1,000, and then he continues and he says 1,001, 1,002. He counts extra. So like over there, it's clear that he's giving extra. Sai, he's in our case. Therefore, that's where it's considered that it's also. The fact is, because it's giving it to him, it's not swallowed into the rest of the money. It's defined extra. That's also, which is pretty clear that if he gives him the havla. There's no shaila of ribis. That's what it says in Chayshim Mishpat. It's talking about that he gave it to him b'havla, and therefore there's no shaila of ribis at all. And over there, it becomes a shayla whether you with gezel or not gezel. That's when it comes. If it's within the range of mistake, it's considered you don't have to give it back. If it's not, then you have to give it back. And then the Taz tells you, Bichlal, what the Torah writes. I have a big question, and I will deal with it down the line in Sif Yud Zayin. In Sif Yud Zayin, over there you have the Taz of Kot Beis. Over there, that the Shulchan Aruch is talking about Talmid Chachamim that lend each other something of food, and he gave more up until 20%. It's mutter. It's clear up to 20%. It's only a matana, and the Taz over there brings. The Taz over there says that it's now the Taz over there is asking on the Tur that we saw before. The Taz over there says the Tur understood that the Rambam is matir any form of extra payment that's given as long as you don't say that it's for the purpose of ribis. But the Rambam himself, he's only matir when he writes in Periches, himself is only matir in mechile, which mechile is less. But ha'levah would be clear that he would be oiser. So how does the Torah understand such a thing? And the Rambam himself, when he's matir in this scenario, is matir only Talmid Chacham, only Davar Mu'at, and only Davar Meichel. And more so, that also the Lashon of the Rambam, he says he's giving it to him stam. It doesn't say that he's giving it to him and telling him he's giving him more, but just not telling him it's for ribis. So how does the Torah understand that it comes from how does the Torah understand that the Rambam is matir even in ha'levah? So he splits up the two. He answers, no, you have to, let's be medayik in the lashon of the Torah. What the Torah says that Rashi is matir, and in the Rambam you also find the heter. What he's trying to tell you is Rashi is matir in every scenario, even in ha'levah. In the Rambam, we find an idea of a heter by mecher. And my father, the Rosh, disagrees with both. He's machmir for sure by ha'levah, even though he understood that Rashi holds that it's mutter. And he's machmir even by mecher, that the Rambam, there's a heter by the Rambam for mecher. So that's how the Taz understands. That's how the Taz understands the Tur. First, the Taz is the first one that we see that he splits within the Rashi and the Rambam within the Tur. Up until now, we looked at Rashi and the Rambam. The way the Tur understood them is he bunches them together. Now he is medayik in the Rambam in the Lashon of the Tur that splits the two. It says Rashi matir and the Rambam that there is a word of heter by the Rambam. It's only talking about mecher.
And when he argues, he argues on in derech mecher's taich whether he got the money derech mecher or mekach memkar.
What does the Taz say? It seems like the Taz doesn't make a difference because the Taz says as long as it's ba'avla and there's no description, then it doesn't fall into the category of ribis.
The fact that this the way he explains the Torah, the Rosh argues.
He doesn't hold it the Torah. The Taz has a question in the Torah and says, okay, but the Torah, the Taz doesn't agree with the Torah, the way the Torah understands the Torah Paschals. The Taz's shitta is that it goes if it's avla or not avla. If it's avla, then it falls into the if it's avla and you don't mention anything, then it falls into the category of chayshim mishpat. And you don't say anything. And if it falls, and if it's not halva, if you do mention something, and it's then you have a shayla. If it's mecher, if it's halva, if it's mos.
The Rambam that the Torah is referencing is by any mekach memkar.
By any mekach memkar, yeah. Yeah, that even the Rambam that the Torah is choylek on is talking about mekach memkar, not about halva. Halva for sure would be us. Now back to Sif Daled. The Shach on Sif Daled also has the same chayshemish but simulation with base, and he takes a different approach. And first he brings a Parish and he disagrees with the Parish. Now you know the Parish is the same one who wrote the Sman, and the Parish, the Shach argues with some of chayshemish, but it seems like he's arguing with some over here also. The Parish, so what the Shach brings the Parish, brings the shiloh of the Parish. The Parish says, in Choshen Mishpat, in Choshen Mishpat, we see over there, the Torah says that Ba'alva, if it's within the Das Taya, you don't have to give it back. It doesn't mention anything about Rebis. And he says, he brings the teretz of the Parish that it has to do, the Parish says, and the Choshen Mishpat is saying that you didn't open your mouth at all. And over here, that's why it's not a shiloh of Rebis. And over here, it's talking about that you did open your mouth, you just didn't say the word Rebis. That's why it's awesome. So he says it's not, the Shach has a few questions on him. First question is, didn't say it over here, the Lashon doesn't mean, it seems like it didn't say anything. It's still awesome. The Rambam that the Torah is relying on, which is the Rambam in Perek Daled, which is about Das Taya, also is talking about, it doesn't say anything. Why? Because he mentions Das Taya. Das Taya obviously means you didn't say anything. But if you would say something, it's not a mistake. If you tell him I'm giving you 105, it's no more Das Taya. Das Taya is that I'm giving you 105 without saying anything. And you make a cheshbon, I'm giving you 105, I was supposed to give you 100, is the extra 5 within a range that would make a mistake without realizing. If I made the mistake without realizing, I obviously didn't tell you I'm giving you extra. So obviously to make this differentiation, that over here we're talking about that over here we're talking about that you said something but not ribis, and over there you're talking about you didn't say in Chashmir, you're talking about, it doesn't make sense. Therefore, and also the Torah, and therefore we have to say, based on that understanding, that when the Rosh is cholik, even if you don't say anything, not only if you say something but not ribis, if you don't say anything. Therefore, the Shach says that really the differentiation between here and between Hilchos Ribis and Choshen Mishpat is whether the extra could be looked on like Ribis. If you could be toilet that it's like Ribis and Matana, then it's awesome. That's what it's talking about over here. But if in such a way that there's no way to say that it came mitzad Ribis, but so the money came to him b'derech mecher, that he got the money to purchase something, like by the case of Ravina over there, that he gave him the money to purchase wine. So the money's in his hands b'derech mecher. So in such a scenario that it's not, doesn't look like ribis, then it is mutter. That's what it's talking about in the Choshen Mishpat. The Choshen Mishpat says the words halawa. Over there it's talking about halawa that doesn't look like ribis. And he explains, halawa is talking about that, he explains, so what does it say? Halawa is shaloi ve'motza yisrin. That it's not talking about that the halawa, that you're paying back extra money at the end. That's not the mistake over there. When the Shulchan Aruch over there in Choshen Mishpat says halawa Piraon, halawa is talking about like the Rambam, that the loive found extra money. The loive asked for 100, ended up with 101, 102. So that you could say maybe you counted the singles, you ended up with extra 2. That's where do you have to return it or not? And Piraon is talking about Piraon Chayv Shel Mecher.
So how's that work with Mekach
Mecher. It's only over there. It's talking about Mekach.
It says Ben Shimon Mecher, Ben Baba, Ben Piraon. So what stage?
Mecher is that you're going and you're purchasing something. I'm paying money now to purchase.
So to getting more product.
Getting more product.
Piraon
is I got the product now, and down the line I have to pay for it. So I'm Piraon Shel Mecher. But not in an echte halawa that the money comes in. That's how the Shach understands it. So basically we have 4 ways of understanding the Rosh, the Rambam, and the Rashi. We have the Beis Yosef. We have the way the Beis Yosef understands the Rambam and the Rashi, and the way the Beis Yosef understands how the Torah understood them. We have the way the Parish divides the way the Parish says how the Parish understands the difference between them. Because we have the Beis Yosef, which says that if it's Mekach Memker, it's mutter. If it's halawa, it's asur, according to everyone. We have the Parish that whether it's halawa, it's mecher, what it depends on is what you say. If you said that if you say that I'm giving you extra but not l'shem ribis, it's asur. And if you say If you don't say anything, then it's mutter. The taz, the shit of the taz, that it has to do with havla, and the shit of the shach that it has to do with mechze keribis, and it has nothing to do with what you say. Because even if you don't say anything, if it's done in a way that's mechze keribis, it's also. And the only way it's mutter is if it's done in a way that doesn't look like keribis, whether it's mecher, full-fledged purchase, or halva, that the loive realized that he got more than what he was supposed to, more than what he asked to borrow, and the piraon that you're paying for something, for product that you picked up in the past. What's the difference in the shach and the taz? Very simple. One of the differences, the main difference in the shach and the taz is if the money comes in b'avlo, because according to the shach, it seems that even if the money comes b'avlo, it's still also. What we look at is not whether the money came in b'avlo or not. We look at bichlal if this transaction looks if this transaction looks like ribis or not.
What does that mean? Metzikiribis. Maybe havla is not metzikiribis. You say you can't say that havla is not metzikiribis.
No, because the way he understands it, if you're going to afterwards look at your pile and you're going to see that he gave you 110 for a loan, you know that it's that he gave you extra.
So by mekach it's also you realize.
No, but if it's derech mekach memkar, you could always have an excuse. The price of vegetables went up, so that's why I had to pay him more. Price of vegetables went down, so he gave me an extra case of tomatoes. You have that excuse when it comes to mekach memkar. You don't have that excuse with money. The Alter Rebbe seems to take the approach of the shach, not the taz. The Rosh of Alter Rebbe is b'shas hapiroin ledivrei hakoil osur lozeh litin v'lozeh lekabel. It's osur for the loivet to give back a chas piroin more than what he's supposed to. And it's also to the person, to the malva, to receive more than what he lent a chas piron. I feel davar more to yosim mechoyve bein moes bein davar acher, whether it's money, whether it's something else. Not the one mekach. Yeah. I feel in the miskav and klavish lavo. I feel rogid maton is kain lekin. Shekol ma shenoisim mishas piron yosim mechoyve nile kilibis. Anything you give extra on a monetary loan at the time of piron looks like ribis. So you want to know what does mechze keribis mean? There's your answer what mechze keribis is. Yeah? He says afilu b'stam.
No, but also the kabel means that when he was the kabel, he knew that he was getting more.
He counted the money in front of him. So whatever it is, somehow he knew about it.
No, it doesn't look not the Rabbi that he's saying that he knew that they knew when he was giving it that it was more. It's not saying that if you realize. No,
also as elitin, if the loiven knows that it's more, he's not allowed to give without saying anything.
That's even if maflei b'chashbon.
That's why he says even if maflei b'chashbon it's also.
No, but what if he was maflei b'chashbon? Is it also l'kabel? Or let's say he needs to give it back once he counted.
Shaila is if you have to give it back or not.
If it's also l'kabel means he knew as he was taking it that it was.
He knows he was taking it, and also elitin means the other one's not allowed to give.
He counted the money.
First,
the labor counted.
The loiva counted the money, so he's not allowed to give more. Or the malva counted the money when he received it, he's not allowed to take more.
That's something else. The case looks like that the loiva counted that he counted out the money as he was giving it, and that's worse. It's not serious.
That's what it does. According to the Taz, that's the mechze keribis. You could. I thought that the fact that he says that it's. I understood Alter Rebbe that's even b'avlo. It looks like because he says it's also for him to give, also for the malva to give, also for the loiva to give more. It would mean b'avlo also. So that's what I'm saying, because he says that, so I think b'avlo is also. Also, both. Also, zelitin is one issue, zelakabel. That's the case when he does know about it. Could be machmer according to Taz, according to the shach. Anything you give extra at the time of Piraon looks like ribis. Anything. The shach's mechze ribis. That's the yisoid over here.
How is the Taz only different than the Prisha?
Ah?
The Taz is only different than the Prisha, according to the Torah?
Taz is what?
Very different than the Prisha?
Yeah.
In the Torah?
Seems like it. The Parish is the only one that says it depends on what you say, that if you say something, you don't say anything.
And the Taz is saying,
The way the Taz is saying is that the way the Taz explains it is that the difference between Mecher and Alva, that separates Rashi and he doesn't say it has to do with whether stam or not stam, whether you said something or you didn't say anything.
but if you're counting, you give me one.
Counting is explaining the difference between here and Rishon and Beis. But explaining the shit of the Tur, he says that the way the Tur understood was that Rashi is matir even in Alva, and the Rambam is matir only in Mecher. He doesn't get into differentiation whether you said anything or you didn't say anything. Right, now we have a Chavas Das. Chavas Das comes, opens the statement in Biurim Sivkot and Beis on this Siman, on this Shach and Taz, starts by saying we'll call it a very powerful statement without explaining too much what his statement is. His words are Siman Kuf Samachan Seif Daled. Ayin Taz v'Shach shehikshu mehad ha'choshen mishpat simulation with Beis. Taz and the Shach both come to have the question: what's the difference here in simulation with Beis? Matzis and Rishon Adastoyin and Tzech Lahachzir. But there was some dachok. What they said is dachok the teretz. Side the teretz of the Taz that it has to do with whether you counted in front of you, didn't count with tavla or not, and the teretz of the Shach that it has to do with mechzer keribis or not, and what the definition of mechzer keribis is. The Chavas Das and comes and gives his own explanation. For that we need a shtickle background. They have the Beis Yosef says in Sivav that if someone gives, if a loiva gives a matana sometime after the loan, it's considered ribas mucheres. Right? But if he gives a matana while the money is still in the loiva's hands, it's considered ribas gemura, not ribas mucheres. It's lashon of Beis Yosef. So now comes the Chavas Das, and he says that if the loiva gives extra at the time of the Pirayon, it's only considered, it can't be more than ribas mucheres. Right? Why? Because the money's not in his hands anymore. Now he's giving the money back. It's not biyada anymore. It's only now that he's giving extra afterwards. So the most it could be is ribas mucheres. The classic case of ribas mucheres is a day later. Ribas mucheres over here is 10 seconds later. But it's ribas mucheres. It's not avak ribas. When it comes to ribas mucheres, you don't have to give it back. That's the first point. Even though it's a shemayim. So over here, what we're talking about is, in this case, in Yerideya, is that the loive, that the malva knew about it. And therefore, since the malva knew that he's getting more, the malva is not allowed to take it, because it's easier for him to take ribas mucheres. Chaysh and Mishpat, what are we talking about? That he discovered it later. So now the shaila is not whether you're allowed to take it or not. In Yerideya, the shaila is are you allowed to take it or not. So if you know about it, you're not allowed to take it. It's easier to take it as mucheres. In Chaysh and Mishpat is talking about it, you found out about it later. So you already took it. So the shaila right now becomes, you have to be chayiv lahachzir or not. So over there, you definitely have to be machzir, because it was mucheres. You have no chiyuv to give it back. So then it falls to a different box. Do you have to give it back mitzad? If it's das toya, you don't have to give it back, because it's within the range of mistake. And if it's not, you don't have to give it back. Yeah, it has nothing to do with ribis. Be'etzem, it is ribis mucheres, even if it's very little. Even if it's das toya, the way the Chavas Das understands it, it is ribis mucheres. It's not a vak ribis. So the difference between Yerideya and Chaysh Mishpat is, Yerideya is talking about, in our case, is talking in our halachas is talking about whether the malva is allowed to take it, and the only way the malva is not allowed to take it is if he knows about it. If he doesn't know about it, he's not going to know about it. He's not taking anything. And the Cheshmish is talking about whether they have to give it back or not. So it seems from the Chavas Das that the Isser of ribis applies across the board. Sai in Cheshmish, but Sai in Yerideya, whether you say anything, whether you don't say anything. And the Chatchila, you're not allowed to take it if you know about it. Yeah, and he writes that in Chidushim Sifkot and Gimel. He says עין ביאורים, דווקא לכתחילה אסור לקבל כשנויסן ליוסף, וכשכבר קיבל למוצא ייסן, אין צורך להחזיר. Means that the point over here is whether it's the Isser is on the Malva to receive, that's what we're talking about here today, or whether the Isser is on whether you have to give it back after, which is a different category. Yeah, so we see, it seems to be that from the Chavas Das, the Isser, it's according to the Shach and the Taz and everybody else, what we're saying is in rational basis, nothing to do with Ribbis. There's no Isser, there's no nothing. It doesn't even fall into the category of Ribbis. The Chavas Das comes and says, no, it also falls into the category of Ribbis. Elamai, since it's Ribbis Mucheres, so it falls into a different box. Do you have to give it back or you don't have to give it back? Now, by the way, I didn't want to get into it because that would take a whole nother shiur. There is in the book that I gave you, there is a chuvas, the first two chuvas of Tzemach Tzedek that I put over there. It's a long Siman Reish Tzedek Beis, Siman Pei Beis. That it seems over there, it's one long tshuva that got split, got lost in transit. The first half, Siman Tzedek Beis, was printed in Russia, and then afterwards, when the Rebbe printed in America, they found the first 5 Sa'ifim of the tshuva. And over there, it seems like the whole shaila was whether a loive bought products in the Malva in the middle of the time, or the other way around. And over there, it seems like he also understands, like the Chavas Das, that about this category, that when you pay after the tribus mucheres is only after the money is paid. And the moment that you have no more money in your hands, it moves from the category of akribis into the category of ribis mucheres, and it's a whole different parsha. Yeah, so we see according to the Shach, and according to the Taz, according to the Chavas Das, you're not allowed to give anything extra, even if you don't say that it's teres ribis. Not like the Parish. You're not allowed to give extra. You're not allowed to say that you're giving extra. And anything that we're discussing over here in this and the other day is only talking about stam. You gave without saying anything. That, according to the Taz, has to do whether it was ba'avla or not. According to the Shach, it has to do whether it looks like ribis or not. That therefore, in a form of avod, it looks like ribis. Huh?
This whole time you're saying not to say, all this is when the money came in much earlier. It's nothing about a regular case of matter. It's talking about a case where you prepaid for the matter, right?
Which ones? You either the case of Ravinas, you prepaid for a matter.
No, I'm saying all the time when we say that you can't say that you're giving extra. That's talking about only if you're prepaid.
Or the other way around. Could be the other way around also.
A regular case of matter.
No, not regular case of matter. The other way around. I gave you fruits, and I have to pay you. I'm supposed to give you fruits, and I have to pay you. And if I gave you, I prepaid. If I gave the seller gave fruits, and the buyer has to pay with the money later. That's the shaila if you give extra money. And there's two ways of mecher.
Right.
One way is that the buyer is going to pay more than what he's supposed to pay, or the seller can give more fruits than he's supposed to. And we'll soon see the machlekes of Kiveg and Chasam Sefer. They're related to each other.
Even in those cases, though, there has to be a distance in time between the two givings.
Yeah. If it's right away, there's no problem.
Then it's not mitzad
It's something else. Whatever it is, mecher. The only shell is amtana. Amtana could be a day also.
At what point does amtana end? Like, how much does he have to give in return for it to no longer be considered amtana?
What do you mean?
How much of the times?
I don't know if it's what you told me. If it's a half hour, or a day, or 3 days.
Whatever. It's very common to go to someone. Mar always talks about it. When you sell some oil, you sell extra or less or different kind of things. It's a very common practice to give a little more than what you sell.
Right. So
it's so common. There has to be a certain point, a stage that we say this is not yours at all, and a little later than that is.
So I saw somebody that explains that a lot of this has to do with what's considered what's considered acceptable. how much it's considered acceptable to add more.
This is on Tanas Mice, not giving for waiting.
Huh?
It's not for the waiting either.
It's not for the waiting, it's for to encourage him to buy more from you.
I know that's the whole point of what we're saying, but even if you're not saying it's still good.
Okay, let's okay, there we have Rabbi Kiva Eger. Rabbi Kiva Eger over here in Kuf Samach. The goes Rabbi Kiva Eger on the in the sprint. It's right under Shulchan Aruch, and he has over there on Sif Dalet Ba'agor. He brings the words of Tamidei Rashba that is brought in the Beis Yosef and the Beis Yosef in the name of Tamidei Rashba. That difference between mecher and hava, that the derech mecher they're matir as long as you don't say that it's for the purpose of holding the money. And he adds over there, it only applies in one form of mecher that's similar to the one of the Gemara, the form of mecher that you prepaid for merchandise. And then you got extra merchandise. Then that's what's mutter. That's what the Beis Yosef, the Tamidei Rashba were matter. That means came at a time when we set up a price. I'm going to prepay you now, say $100 for 100 pounds of apples. I prepaid it for you. And at the time of payment, I ended up with 102 pounds, 105 pounds of apples, whatever it is. That's when we could say that it's mutter because the price of apples went down. But if it's the other form of mecher that has to do with money, for example, that I took 100 pounds of apples and then when I have to pay for it a month later, I'm giving $105 instead of $100. Then it doesn't make a difference which form this chiyuv has become, as long as it's money, that the chiyuv is money, I'm giving you more money than if the chiyuv on me was money and I'm giving you more money, it's aser. And this is not like the shach, because from the shach, when we're talking about Pira and Mecher, we could understand that he says that if it's done in this form, to give extra money, it's not aser. Because it doesn't look like a ribis, it's mamish Mecher. You could always say that the price of fruits went up a little bit, but the Rabbi Kiva Eger disagrees on that. That's the Rabbi Kiva Eger's way. Okay, now what you have? So we have Shashtika Machlekes and Rabbi Kiva and the Shach, or Rabbi Kiva Eger and the Shach. Yeah, whether it's talking about, we have to understand what the svaras of the difference between the two are. To me, it seems like it has to do whether you look at the form of the transaction or whether you look at the nature of the transaction or you look at what you use for the transaction. According to the Shach, you look at the nature of the transaction. If the transaction looks like ribis, then it's a problem. If the transaction doesn't look like ribis, then it's not a problem. It's not really dependent on money or fruits. It depends on the nature of the transaction. That's why the Shach says that in Siman Reish Lamed Beis, whichever way of Choshen Mishpat and Reish Lamed Beis, Hava, Perain, Mecher, and those three, Mecher, Hava, Perain, and those three forms, in all three of those, if it was done in such a way that Leikol Mislit, you can't say that it's Ribis or Matane, but it's only a form of Mecher, that's not a problem. According to Rabbi Kiva Eger, to me it looks like he looks at what are you actually giving more. If what you're giving more is money, then it's a problem. I don't care which way you slice it. You're giving more money than what you're supposed to give. That's already a shayla of ribis. Rabbi Kiva Eger is machmer, more machmer than that.
Even according to the Shach, you won't call them nefs and kiribis.
What?
Derech mecher, meaning what's happening is you have.
I took 100 pounds of apples.
Yeah, you have to give money.
I have to give back money for it down the line. I have to pay for it money some point down the line.
And you give back more money.
Huh?
You give back more money.
I didn't give back. I paid a little bit more. The price of the apples went up a little bit.
It's irrelevant. The price of apples went up.
It is, because I'm telling you I'm going to pay based on the price of the apples.
But some of the conveyors
You can't say what the Machlokes is what the Isser is.
Huh?
You say the Shas Isser is massacre, the Kiveger has inherent Isser.
Could be. You could say that. According to Shach, the Isser is Mechzik Ribis. As long as it looks like Ribis, there's no inherent Isser in it. It's only a shaila of the way it looks, and according to the Kiveger, yeah, you could say it that way also.
even according to the conveyor, this by when you get the money direct method, it doesn't say that the price went up. He gave more money.
You gave him money, it's also.
Yeah, so that's not security. Why? Meaning it's understandable that they could call it security. The shop doesn't call it security.
Shach doesn't call it security. It depends on how you look at it. So we have a chasam sefer that seems like a chasam sefer would fit into the way I explain the shach, but you disagree with the way I understand the shach. So chasam sefer will have his own opinion in this matter. The chasam sefer is okay. Over here, this Yalkut Mefarshim doesn't have him. No, it's all Zayn. I'll have to find them elsewhere. Where he is. Anyways, and the other prints I have it. I got the Chasam Sefer on. He says like this: if the moicher gives fruits to the koine, that means he's supposed to pay. Like I just mentioned now, he gives him fruits. The moicher gave a certain amount, let's say 100 pounds of apples, and for a certain amount of money. And then when it was supposed to come the time of Peraon, the moicher realized that the koine gave him more money. He says even the Rosh would be matter in such a scenario. He disagrees completely with the Even the Rosh would be matter. Why? Because it's mamish mecher. But if it's the other way around, that the buyer prepaid for the fruits, and when he came, he got more fruits. Then it looks like you're giving. Then it looks like ribis. Now you think it's exact opposite of what we said until now. What's the swara behind it? Actually, it's a very simple swara. You look at the beginning of the transaction. According to Chasam Sefer, that's what it looks like. Chasam Sefer says, "I gave you money in the beginning, right?" That's when the machlekes and the Rosh and the Rashi and the Rambam is according to the way he understands it. He says, "I gave you money in the beginning for the purpose of getting fruits." That means right now I started a process of a halvah. I didn't start a process of a mecher. I started a process of a halvah. I started with $100. I didn't start with a bag of potatoes. I started with $100. So now comes the end, and I'm going to give you 105 pounds of apples instead of 100 pounds of apples. So according to the Rosh, looks like ribis. You started the transaction with money. It looks like ribis. According to the way the Talmidei Rashba and the way the Rashi and Rambam understood, the way Tur understood Rashi and Rambam is, such a scenario it would be matter. The way the Beis Yosef understands it would be mecher. Yeah, but if it's the other way around, when you started with fruits, it doesn't look b'chlal like ribis. It's mamish mecher. So the Chasam Sefer says that even the Rosh would be moided that it's completely mutter if you give more money at that. Complete exact opposite of a shvera b'kiveger.
So what about the story of the Gemara?
Huh?
What about the story of the Gemara?
Of what?
That was the case until now. We always said it was mutter, that he gave money and then he got back.
Yeah, so I'm saying the Rosh says that he understands that the Rosh in such a scenario, that's the way he doesn't understand the Gemara that way. Because the whole Gemara, the way we explained until now, was based on Rashi. Rashi's spiritual the Gemara.
I mean, even it wasn't the other way around. It wasn't that he gave.
No, it was clear. The story in the Gemara is clear.
Yeah.
He gave money and he got more fruits. The question is why. But the way he understands that the Rosh understood in such a scenario that it's asur because he started off with money. And Rashi is the one that says it's mutter. That's how it looks in Chasur. So what's the ma'aser here? We have the Alter Rebbe. The Lashon of Alter Rebbe is Sifches Achol Zebalva v'Mekach u'Memkar muter l'divrei hakoil im noisen lo yischayro me'at yoser mima shechayev lo. Yeah, I feel miskabel shehimten like shem far shloiken noisen lo b'stam mipnei she'in adover nikar shu b'shvil shehimtin lo. So he says, first of all, you're giving schayre. So we see it only works similar to the Kiveger, not the Chasam Sefer. Talking about that you gave, the case of Mekach u'Memkar is that you gave more, at the end of it, you gave more schayre. Why is that? Because by Schayra ain't a davar nikra shu b'shur shehimtin. It doesn't seem, when you give Schayra, it doesn't seem like it's because b'shur shehimtin. It seems like just the price of the fruits and vegetables went down. As long as it's not visible that it's ribis, like gozer b'mekach umemka. If it's mekach umemka, then there's no such gzeira. If it doesn't look like ribis. But that's only if it's davar mot. Yes, chayra mat. If it's ma'aseh habe, then it's mefar. It's as if you tell me giving him extra mitzat ribis, and it's also even in mekach umemka. So it seems like the Alter Rebbe holds like he was before the Kivega. So the same swara, the same kav as the Kivega holds like Alter Rebbe. Chasam Sefer does not. That the halacha would be obviously like Alter Rebbe. That if it's the purpose, if you only when you're giving him schayre, only when you're giving him, only when it's a little bit. And in such a scenario, because it does not seem like ribis, all it seems like is that you gave him extra for that you made the price of the fruits lower.